constant time in the cosmic salon. I'm niche, and I'll be your companion as we slip into the liminal. Relax and sink in with an open mind and an eye for the curious and strange. Come, let go with me. All right, here we are with another time in the Cosmic Salon, and I have one of the most amazing people on the planet. We all know and love this man. He has a new book he's been working on that is coming out. It's called The Non.Local Mind in a Holographic Universe, and I've had the pleasure to have a little peek-see-poo at it, and I can't wait to dive into this material. We're going to get non-local. I'm welcoming in Dr. Richard Allen Miller.
You're using something other than Skype, believe that or not. I've been using Skype for almost 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And Zoom is also compromised.
I don't like Zoom at all these days.
Yeah, and if you thought you lost privacy, wait till you see what graphene oxide does. It turns you into an antenna. That's the magnetic part, and everything about you, including when you want to urinate and when you have to have sex, is broadcasted to the cloud.
Oh, my God. I know. This is...
So for vaccinated people, what that means literally is, and this is the fact, we're in a Petri dish. They have just now created another rhesus negative glitch in humanity, and you're no longer human. You're a GMO that belongs, according to the Supreme Court, as a patented quality to the company that manufactured the serum.
I've been talking about this for months now, Rick, and I get a lot of feedback in a bad way with people saying, we're not GMO'd, and
You're not? Well, then, good luck with that. And, I've got 4 PhDs.
Yes.
I'm a GS-18 with Navy intelligence, and I'm 77 years old. That means they can't pay me anymore. There's a rule with government employees at 72. And what I do is important.
Yes.
And if you want to get negative feedback, okay. But even my sister and my daughter have been vaccinated, and now I probably will not ever be able to have contact with them because they're carriers.
Yes.
You want to talk? It isn't about the COVID virus.
Right. It never was.
Spike protein. It's about the spike protein and the fact that they have GMO'd you. You've made you into a GMO. Now, if you think man did that.
No, this is non-human. This is non-human.
Well, something else is going on. I don't know if I'm going to say non-human or I'm not going to go there because, in fact, man's inability to conceptualize has created these concepts of conspiracy, aliens, and the rest of it.
Yes.
I did one tour at Groom Lake at level 8 for the government, and I met krill. So if you want to know whether aliens exist or not, I would say to you, how could they not, since imagination is reality?
Yes.
And your belief system is what shapes that.
Yes.
And you have choices. That's what made you God's favorite. And we are all different, uniquely.
You've touched on several things you touch on in your book, which is amazing. And I wanted to get into those things. I actually wanted to start with God's favored.
Children. Children are probably our single most important natural resource. And I am currently writing a new field theory to supersede my holographic concept of reality, which I wrote in 1972 when Gabor went to Stockholm. Now, I'm not a big deal. I'm not that, intelligence has many faces. I'm just one of them. I'm basically a 4-year-old that never became 7. That's why I wanted to see a picture of you, not Queen Elizabeth or whatever she is.
That is me.
Well, I'm like a little child. Everything I have synesthesia, which is a whole chapter in my book. And synesthesia is where you mix your sensory motors. Like I hear colors, I see music, I feel temperament. One of the doors that opened for me at Groom Lake, I was at level 8 and I met Krill, was that emotions are a higher form of language. And they're not like dream states. That's what consciousness is. It is a shared dream. There are dream states like lucid dreaming that have more content to reality than consciousness does. If time is not real, and it's not, it's a duration of consciousness, the way you store memory. If time isn't real, what does that make your child?
Exactly.
That's the field theory I'm writing now on psionic field theory. It's with 2 Russians on the proton cloud, a major breakthrough they made last year on the space between when a proton is a particle and when it becomes a wave. And that's where your multiverse lies. And I'm going to be using a virtual form of Nick Kaufman's knot theory, but I know, I don't know. And here's the real news. Physics and religion, your 2 brains, will not get you there. They'll get you close, like Simon says, you can go halfway to the door.
Yes.
But by definition, physics starts off with assumed truths. You know, the shortest distance between 2 points, the Earth's round. But space is curved. I can prove it's flat. Which one is it? Because that's how limited your concept of space is. I watched astrology become astronomy and then evolve into cosmobiology in Prague in 1973. Now, what does that mean? Well, Janov had written a book on the lunar sex cycle of the female where he proved that when the woman is born, there's an engram on when she ovulates based on the phase of the moon and the Earth and the sun. If she moves to a different part of the planet, that phase angle changes and her ovulation cycle changes. And guess what? They were using that for birth control. The study I did with Department of Interior Menlo Park back then was when the planet Uranus and the Earth and the sun are in a specific geometric alignment, there's a major earthquake on Earth. And even suspicious observer doesn't do that. I used the 360 and I went back through time and vetted the fact that there was a 3 sigma error coefficient on the planet Uranus with Earth. Now, in astrology, Uranus is a higher octave of Earth. And yet, in astronomy, there are no known laws on how the planet Uranus could possibly in any way affect the Earth. And even people today are no longer using that concept. I vetted that for the military. And it was 3 sigma. That means there was a 99.9975% probability of the event occurring.
Rick, I think we should back up here and look at field theory for a second. And I want to, and this was a note I had and something I wanted you to clear up. When we talk about the Tesla etheric field or the ether field.
Let me put it this way. Dr. Stanley Krippner, who is my mentor and the one that introduced me to Edgar Mitchell in 1970 in New York, was what allowed me to be at mission control in 1971 to do the ESP studies with NASA. Now, back then, both ESP and hypnosis were pseudosciences. And what I did was I described psionic fields. What is a psionic field? Well, I have no idea any more than if I were to try to tell you what an electromagnetic field is. I can talk about bandwidth and bandwidths and frequencies. I can talk about light and sound and, microwave, those kinds of things. But again, they are based on my ability to conceptualize, and I'm limited. Let me give you a typical example. In 1974, actually it was in 73, late 73, I was asked by Carl Sagan to go into John Lilly's labs in Berkeley to determine if the dolphin had a language. They wanted to talk to the dolphin so that they could, use them as weapons, to guide their, torpedoes.
It's terrible,
whatever.
yeah.
I was there like 10 days when I was blown away. The dolphin had a language. I have eidetic memory, I should mention, so that that's why they started using me at 15. I did code. I speak 12 languages.
Yes,
fluently.
yes.
And Old Hebrew and Greek were some of my early languages when I studied under Gershom Scholem after graduate school. I became a Hermetic Kabbalist. I'm not a Zadi, but I speak Old Hebrew. And the dolphin language was even more complex than mother letters and the Sefer Yetzirah, Book of Formation from the Bible.
Yes.
Now, there's a mammal that is speaking a language that is way beyond anything humans ever had.
Yes.
And I was wrong, because the dolphin, recently proven, they're not speaking a language. They're sending pictures. Now, and that's me doing holographic concept. And even back then, I had no concept of a hologram in that sense of it. And one of the doors that opened for me when I did my tour at Groom Lake, and this was less than 4 months ago, was that the language an alien would use is emotion. And not like we experience in dreams, but 20 minutes of exposure to this alien is an equivalent to a lifetime of words. And that was just one door of the 20 minutes I spent with this close encounter. Now, are aliens real? And I have to say, how could they not be? But I don't think they're from another place or another time. Imagine what a farmer would think of you and me right now, dialoguing with each other 100 years ago in England.
Yes.
Okay, well then take and add 4 zeros to like 10,000 years. And where could you comprehend at all what's actually going on? It's not possible. And the dolphin is just one of 4 cetacean, of which Orca has access to 9/10 of the biosphere, where man has only access to 1/10. Who's superior? Or let's try it another way. How many ants are on your property right now, and who's terraforming it more? Well, that's what I do for the military. I'm an elite scout. I'm not any brighter than anybody else. I just think a little differently. And because I'm gifted, that's why I would say children are possibly our single most important asset. And while social distancing should have happened 10 years ago, not from this creepy virus bullshit that's going on.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Well, what happens is, imagine educational reform and the need for what they're doing to our children today. And realize that if that child is a younger version of you from the multiverse, why would you want to take and dumb it down to become you?
I'm saying yes. I mean, you're speaking you're speaking too logically. People seem to not be getting that. Are you noticing that this, I call it the bite, is diminishing? I think it's the prions, people's processing power within their brains.
Well, the better way to put this is, they're dumbing us down so we can mine gold better and not be like David Copperfield with my empty bowl asking, "Sir, can I have some more, please? I want something more." What is that I want? Spirituality is not what you do, but how you do it. Batman, he said, it's not who you are, what you do defines who you are. And
yes.
Castaneda suggested that the 4 enemies of man are fear, When you overcome fear, you have personal power. And that becomes an enemy, power. The third enemy is that you get a little older and you start to see things more clearly.
Yes.
And that's an enemy. And of course, I'm currently enjoying the fourth enemy of man, old age. Do anything about it. I'm joking. I am writing a new field theory to supersede my holographic concept by 47 years. What is psionic fields? I don't know. Any more than I can tell you what an electron is. We have definitions and assumed truths which limit us to a flat or round Earth, but space-time, if our measurements in space and time are not real, Einstein, whatever, that's why we went from a quantum universe into a holographic one. But holographic systems are just as limited because their mathematics uses fractals. Mandelbrot, Julia, May patterns. These generators are quantized. And that's where Heisenberg comes in with the uncertainty principle. And the more you know about one thing, the less you know about something else. So this book is a culmination of what I did, starting with ESP, which was the first protocol to select SEAL Team 1, which I did in 72 after being at mission control in 71, to discover what psionic fields were and what they were not with Ed Mitchell. And now, Power Tools, the second book in that series, were the 8 protocols that were used to make what you now call super soldiers. You know, the one on learning how to control breath control. You know, didgeridoo, blowing through a candle, a straw, whatever. That was, if you can control time with breath, you can take your martial art to a paranormal level. And Asifu taught me that after I had studied with John Leong in Seattle with Bruce Lee, Skip Ellsworth, and Fred Williams. I'm that kid. And I grew up in the streets of the Philippines. I was Caucasian, so I learned how to fight when I was 4 years old, going to Shaolin Temple. But I also learned how to play chess and in the streets. And I got to play with that really incredible girl at that time. I do 28 boards, and I can tell you, I don't know. Now, with my academic backgrounds, plural, the individuals I've been blessed in studying under, and what I've done over my lifetime, I can tell you I don't know, because it doesn't work that way. And that is where the non-local mind goes. Now, what we're going to prove and study is that the brain's neurotransmitters are resonant cavity oscillators, just like bacteria are in the gut. It's like a hierarchy brain. But that brain does not talk to the physical world. That brain talks multiverse and the options that man has with his imagination. And there aren't, like what Timothy Leary suggested, 8 neurologic circuits, which is what I talk about in my previous books, but a hierarchy like there are in your gut. And there are thousands of different neurotransmitters. Now, the Earth is alive. It uses mycorrhiza as its gut, and mycelium is the nervous system where it will dialogue of an impending forest fire, like a precursor wave in solid-state physics. It will notify the entire forest mother tree. There's a woman in UBC, in forestry, that's talking about this now. And this is what I am as your lead scout, trying to open doors that you have choices on. And to just realize that everybody listening to me is hearing something different.
Yes.
And that's what makes us God's favored, was the choice and uniqueness. That's why I could absolutely say religion is not where truth lies any more than physics. What it is it has made you so unique that anything you could imagine, even like what God is not only what you're capable of achieving in this lifetime, but is also less than halfway to God. And that is, you can't know God. You can't know God. You can experience him.
Yes.
But you can't know him by definition. And that's the limitation.
If you can experience it, you are not it.
Oh, I've never heard quite put like that, but okay. I can grok what that might imply. Your mind's eye, that's chapter 8 in my book.
Yes.
Where imagination is reality. It's not physics or religion. It's what you can imagine. And what you can imagine is what you are experiencing by definition. And you think that death is the end of man. That's in chapter 7. I talk about what happens at the moment of and the moment just after death with consciousness. And basically, the Egyptians talk about the Ba and the Ka. They make a distinction between the mortal and the immortal part of self, the Ba and the Ka. And at the moment of death, there is a 5-gram weight loss in everyone, and it is not urine. What is that? Well, what I'm going to suggest is it's microtubules with structured water outside the physical body, what you would call chi. Now, 5 grams of, and I have a whole chapter on structured water.
Yes.
5 grams of structured water is enough memory as a metaphor for 100,000 lifetimes.
When you say something like that and we're looking at that many lifetimes and we step outside of the wheel of time, what does that look like?
I don't know how to express it for you. You might be your child experiencing time differently than the adult part of you. Or you are me, and I am you, and I am the walrus.
Yes.
I don't know how to answer these questions in a sense. I can try to use my physics because everybody believes, that physics has got the answers. And I am as good as it gets. And no, I don't know. It doesn't work like that.
Yes.
Simon says you can go halfway to the door. Well, you can get really close. But you can't get there by definition.
Yes, I'm with you on that. I agree.
Okay, well then there are 4 mammals on this planet have more advanced technology than man. They have bigger brain cases, and one of them has a cerebral cortex that's twice the size of man, and that mammal is firing 60% of it, not 10. That's Orca. And that's why British Columbia just last week issued a warning that there are 3 pregnant orca off of British Columbia, off of Vancouver Island, and to be very careful and allow them passage.
Yes.
Now, well, it's because they put it in Hitchhiker's Guide when the dolphin left. Thanks for all the fish. It's a metaphor in our ability to comprehend what we are and what we are not. And if you can't experience something, then it's outside your realm of mind's eye.
Yes.
And to know something is a tool. That's called belief systems. I have a whole chapter in this new non-local mind, which now takes the 8 protocols that I developed for Navy SEAL, and I try to restructure them for you and me.
when we're looking at the mind's eye and we're looking at imagination, what is the barrier here between, say, dream time?
Which kind of dream time?
Well, the conscious dream time where you're lucid in it, within it.
Oh, you mean when you're daydreaming? Or
Yeah.
spacing out? Or let's see, what other words have we used over the years? Dr. Stanley Krippner, my mentor, worked at Maimonides Dream Labs with Montague Ullman and wrote a book called Dream Telepathy. Now, one of my teachers, Andrea Puharich, wrote a book called Beyond Telepathy. What does that mean? Yeah, it's interesting.
It's
Telepathy,
provocative, yeah.
Oh, yeah. The ESP book, I was challenged when I developed this for SEALs. This is why they use it. They held a tournament sponsored by Duke University. Dr. Rind, all of those guys. They challenged me, and they brought in Gene Dixon and Sybil Leek. And using my technique, I won that contest by 4 orders of magnitude.
Oh, wow.
Now, how did I do that? It's an altered state, a very specific altered state. I watched a woman once rip a car door off to save her daughter in a flaming automobile. Now, that's impossible. Oh, you say, well, the adrenaline. Well, what did the adrenaline do? Did it make her bone and her muscles stronger than steel? No. The altered states are gifts from God that allow you to do things you can't do in conscious mental state. And when you take a drug like mushrooms, that's a big one in allotropic medicine right now. I have, by the way, a Schedule 1 growing tonnage for the Canadian government up in Abbotsford. Wrong direction in medicine, just like always, because one size does not fit all. And we're not all the same. What's toxic to you is not to me. And what's fat to you is not for me. My girlfriend is built like a unicorn. I mean, she's skinny, and yet she's got strong legs. Unbelievable. And everybody's uniquely different. And the reason one goes to church is for aspiration of aspiring toward a set of belief systems that you want to find fellowship in for reinforcing and getting you closer to becoming a better Christian or Muslim. And just like Christianity and Muslim, they have Al-Qaeda and devil worship.
Yes.
These are the extremes in these religions and belief systems. Belief systems are tools in a toolbox. And one of the things I trained SEALs were to be able to discard a belief system like they would a pair of clothing. Because if it isn't going to work for you, why would you want to use it?
Yes, I agree.
And that's what my non-local mind is about, to try to give you insight on how you might take, not learn, study what I have discovered, like in Tai Chi. Everybody does it differently. And so when you have Chi, is when you are in your own, experiencing it. And that's the part, mind's eye. It may not, the way I like to do it is Steve Gaskins, before he started the farm in Tennessee, he taught a class in Berkeley. I was grateful enough to experience that class. He walked into class, he calls it Monday night class. He walk in the room, before he even introduces himself, he goes straight to the blackboard and he draws a circle on the board. And he says, it may not be a perfect circle, but it's a perfect whatever it is.
I love that. It's exactly right.
Well, it's a tool.
Yes.
A way of using my insight and integrating it so that it becomes yours. Not something I did, but something that's you. And that's what the non-local mind is about, is to discuss the fact that there's something more going on around us than just the physical plane and consciousness.
When we look at the idea of psyche into water, which you talk about in the book.
Matter. Yeah, that's James Hillman. Okay. Yep. Carl Jung, and then third generation imaginal psychology, James Hillman. He was one of my teachers, and I was, and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross out of Texas. They talk about how you take your imagination, put it into the physical universe. Metaphysics, which I taught 11 years at Harvard, 15 courses, 8-week courses each for 11 years. John Mack at Harvard managed to take my third course and started his alien abduction studies. And the first thing that I did for him is I told him that his studies are not going to prove the existence of God. But what he could do in psychotherapy is perhaps help the trauma and wounding that occurred when someone experiences a close encounter. Is it real or is it imagined? And the correct answer on that one is, again, yes.
Yes.
And so the distinction when a little child tells you there's a boogeyman who's under my bed, you better believe it.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
Boo. I am very blessed at my age. I'm 77 now. How do I sound?
You sound amazing. You always sound amazing.
Yeah, my doctor, I went in for, the 6-month health check. He tried to get me every 4 months. He didn't need it. He tried to put me on meds. He was a Seventh-day Adventist. Your blood pressure is up to 151 over 82. I'm going to have to put you on meds. And not happening. Oh, Rick, I might have to fire you.
Oh.
And I said, cuff me. Because I trained sales on biofeedback.
Yes.
And what I did, I just dropped my heart rate down to 129. That takes care of his needs. That's not 130 over 72 is not a world standard where everybody's got to be that way or they need medication.
Right.
Well, then what do you think the COVID virus is? I think our parents need to have a COVID party where they expose their children like Mom did to me for mumps and measles.
And chicken pox. Yeah. Yep. Same
because
here.
It's not medicine and immunization that's going to save you. It's being healthy.
Yes.
And your immune system. And that's exactly what I was going to try to say about drugs. Drugs are not what cause the altered states, like the studies they did with LSD. I was blessed in meeting Timothy Leary in 1974, when it was still legal and Harvard was doing their big studies on what would happen if they gave LSD to a genius. There were 10 of us that were selected, and I remember he came to Seattle, talked to my mother first, and then went to Pullman, where I was doing undergraduate work, and talked to my professor Riggins. And once he did that, then I had never gotten any kind of high. And I didn't drink alcohol, didn't smoke, didn't do anything. And imagine what that did to me in 1964. We're up at Deception Pass, Hurricane Ridge, looking 2,000 feet down into Puget Sound.
I love Deception Pass.
And Leary leans over and he said, "Wouldn't it be neat to jump?" That moment changed my entire life as a pivotal point. And from that moment on, I became fascinated with the study of altered states and what they are and what they are not. In my laboratory, downstairs here, on the laboratory I used, I built the Manager Foundation in Topeka. And then when we had our single gain amplifiers out of John Fluke on Bainbridge Island, at that time it was called J&J Enterprises, I started the first video feedback systems. And we did a play, the students wrote it at Evergreen, called Eat the Sun. then you will be your own father. And what that was about a biofeedback laboratory where it fed back to you your biology so that you could put yourself in perfect sync with yourself. That was called the Vitaru Telemahandi.
Yes.
And basically, if you eat the sun, then you will be your own father. It was it was like a spoof. But amazingly, it won Best Picture in Cannes as a short. And I did the laboratory, which in 1974 led me to the discovery of cymatics and how audio and video, color and geometry and so on, affected biological processes. Mm-hmm. And that will be my next book out, The Diamond Body. And that's on cymatics, then the work I did in 1974. Electromagic is next after that. Now that I've got the non-local mind, Electromagic is where in 1979, I used Mora and Indemet, German acupuncture equipment, where I could talk directly to neurotransmitters using electric currents and wave shaping. And basically, chemistry and mushrooms, psilocin, normobiocystin, those kinds of things, they're similar, but different. A neurotransmitter in your brain, structurally. And what happens next, like dimethyltryptamine, the one you smoke in a pipe that Steve Blake invented, is 5-alpha. The one in your brain is N, N hyphen dimethyltryptamine. That's the one Rick Stressman and others have studied. I worked out of anesthesiology doing these studies for the government. And let me tell you what I discovered. The drug is actually, the altered state is a state of consciousness created by that neurotransmitter when it's dialoguing to those universes. Mm. And Yogatronics, the third book in that series that I did in 1983, is me as a little boy on Mars creating my own wormhole, not needing CERN. It's resonant cavity oscillation, sacred geometry. You meditate in certain geometries, and you set up resonant cavity oscillation. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? Who do you want to be?
Yeah.
That's the future of man.
Okay, so let's look at the nature of what we are, the apparent reality that we seem to be in right now. This is also an altered state of reality, depending on your point of perspective.
Do you know how many altered states that you personally have gone through in just this amount of interviewing in 45 minutes? You know, basically, we are constantly in and out of different altered states where our ability in visualizing, like dimethyltryptamine, you could do methamphetamine and have the strength of 10. These are the sum of what man's future is about. And we're already there because time isn't real. And I've already seen it in my mind's eye. And if I see it, it means you've got it. That's
yes.
that.
Yes. How does that structure this reality, though, the idea of time?
Well, the problem is most of us are coming from a place of wounding. Like you had a husband that wasn't a very good husband, and so you're never going to do that again, and you go somewhere else and create another wound. The distinction between intent and purpose is that intent is actually what happens at the end of the day with karma and all the rest of it, where purpose is why you chose to be in this nightmare in the first place. That's why some of the Bibles would refer to this as purgatory. You know, it's a place of plus and minuses where you can hope for something. Mm-hmm. You know, like Pandora's box, the last evil. And hope is when you're dead standstill and you can go in either direction. Where knowing is when you're moving forward.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. The knowing part is a big deal. So let's talk about the knowing. What is this? This is a deeper tap into what it is that the internal structure of the soul is.
Personal knowledge of yourself. Again, that's several writers call it self-realization.
Yes.
And okay. Self-realization is what we call in the Hermetic Kabbalism, it's Tippereth. Knowledge and conversation, it's Christ consciousness, halfway to God. And path 13, there is a missing Sephirah just above Tippereth called doth, D-A-A-T-H. And doth is the only place in the universe where knowledge becomes wisdom. It's a temporary place. It's not real. It would be as if I came to a roaring river and you couldn't believe it. Without hesitation, I leaped out into the roaring river like the fool stepping out over the abyss.
Yes.
And I touched on a stone underwater for a brief moment on my left foot, leaping over, landing on my right foot onto God. And it's a temporary place. You're just for a moment. And that's what I write about now, pathworking, because my new book out that will be coming out on tarot is called The Magical and Ritual Use of Metaphor, Tribal Gods in Daily Living. Now, the Greek had 22 stories in the big city. And if you have only one storyboard going on, then you're possessed. And if you have more than one storyboard going on, like most of us, then you're complexed. Mm-hmm. And each storyboard, usually someone like you or me, might have 4 to 8 different storyboards going on. And your goal, this interview self-destructs and Mission Impossible, you have, each one has an ending. Is that how you want this lifetime to end? If not, then that is the purpose of pathworking and the various stages of changing the movie, various levels of changing the movie. And I have written 12 books to sequel The Magical and Ritual Use of Metaphor on pathworking. The first starts the Isad, a mastery of emotion, and goes up middle pillar, although I do Had and Netzach on the outer male and female paths. The middle pillar, path 13, High Priestess, is what I'm currently writing about, and my writing goes as far as doth, above Chokmah and Chokmah. I am the magician that did not blow himself up as a metaphor, not Jack Parsons.
Yes, of course.
Well, Jack formed Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and his leech, which is only a third-degree magician, L. Ron Hubbard, formed Scientology. And, I've Science of Mind, Unity Church, Scientology.
So I want to look at the ideas of causality and karma.
Karma is when you overreact because of wounding. And a wound is an owie. And what you're doing is crashing from one direction to another, and you're banging off the wall as you're walking down the hall, as a metaphor. And that's where you create karma, or bruises, or further wounding. When you race a sports car like I do, I have a 280Z, I find the line in the road, and I try to drive the smooth track, and for what that car is designed for. And each car is different. And so the line in the road is different. Obviously, if you're using a Humvee, big tank, whatever, it's quite different than a sports car. I can put my sports car into, if it's dry, I can put it into a four-wheel drift with complete control. And that's because I've been driving it a long time. And I know that car, just like an old soul, knows himself.
Yes.
That's what self-realization is.
Yes, I often use that same analogy, and sometimes starships are bio units here. What of causality with all this? Is causality even playing?
Causality is an excuse for creating more wounding, cause and effect. Basically, chapter 5 is on synchronicity, where nothing happens by chance. And that's the part where you need to understand you're creating your own story. And you have some choices on how quickly. Are we there yet? And where is there? And yet mean impatience. The whole part of life is not about karma. It's about the journey. That's why we're missing it when we try to. How did Maxwell Smart put it? Missed it by that much.
I love your references.
Laughing is where you're not going to be, you can't take yourself seriously, for crimey's sake. You need introspection.
Yes.
And the purpose, and this is possibly the most important thing I'm going to say tonight, man has a responsibility for the thoughts he chooses to entertain. Mm-hmm. That's where your karma comes in.
Let's look at that and overlay it on what's going on in the apparent world around us with all this craziness.
Well, you're talking about the COVID virus and the lockdown and the rioting and the
yes.
over my dead body. No problem. This one's got my name on it. I can tell you that I really don't know. Basically, and this is the bad news, we're pretty much on our own and along for the ride. We control, in my universe, is a fantasy.
Yes.
You don't have control. At some level, something else is going on, and you can't even comprehend it yet. Basically, that's why I would say that what's going on right now is we're watching a Petri dish where they've just manufactured a new kind of human being, not Homo sapien, but I don't know what it's going to be called, but the blood looks different.
Yep.
A spike protein has now made you a carrier, which means that the two can't interface with each other. So what do we have? Well, we have population control. We have a bunch of people in fear. So we'll put them with a sponsor ownership, and a chip in their arm. And that's probably what's going to happen in 50 years. We're going to be owned by one of about 20 sponsors, chips.
Well, the tech in us right now is patented, so the people that are doing it are already owned. That's
correct. And that's Supreme Court decision last week. Yeah. And so how's that going to play? I really don't know. I can tell you that I do not yet have enough information to allow anybody to change my DNA.
Oh, hell no. No.
Well, not hell no, but, maybe I will.
Maybe you will, but at this point.
I don't have enough information to confirm that that's going to help me.
Yeah.
Well, and I know already that money, like Cyndi Lauper, money changes everything. Madonna, I'm a materialistic girl. Tina Turner, there you go. What's the love got to do with it?
Yes, Rick.
I have to laugh because I know that I don't know.
Yes.
And if I don't know, what does that say to all of you that believe in physics?
you'll probably think this is simplistic, but what is your idea around or ideas around the psychic knowing, the psychic consciousness, the super consciousness?
Knowing is when you're moving forward. That tells you that at least you're moving.
Yes.
Now, here's the bad news. All roads lead to Rome, but you need a North Star to know what direction you're going in. That is the purpose of ritual. It celebrates the myth. And by drawing a circle around yourself, what you're doing, you can do that with your mind's eye. You don't have to draw it in sand.
Right.
You don't need mumble in Enochian or whatever. What you can do is say, everything inside this circle is me, and everything outside that circle is not me.
Yeah, very Jung. Jung brought that made that very apparent in his writings. But the circle is, when you give it dimensionality, the sphere.
Well, it can be white light. That's what Dion Fortune did with the Psychic Self-Defense. That's an excellent book to begin reading.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Well, yeah, she also wrote The Demon Lovers and Dr. Taverner. There's, good writers. You see, that's what magic lodges were about in the early centuries in Europe. They were reserved for the ultra elite poets, scientists, writers,
yes,
philosophers, to go beyond the physical. That's what meta means in Greek, beyond. So when you talk about metaphysics, you're talking about beyond the physical. And that's where you have a worldview that is more encompassing. And as I was trying to imply, belief systems, if you choose to look at things this way, then these are the doors that are available to you. And if you choose to look at it that way, then those doors are available. And the difference between Buddhism, Christianity is a Buddhist can be a Christian, but a Christian cannot be a Buddhist. Limitation in your worldviews. And that's why you aspire for broader worldviews, and when they don't encompass where you want to go, that door over there, door number 7, new car is waiting for you. Then
come on down.
Change your belief, because it's a tool, not an absolute.
Yes.
And Muslims are even more devoted to their children and their religion and belief systems, Christians. And that's why they have the diversity Christianity does of Satanism, where you have Taliban that would take someone like you and consider you less than a dog.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're feminine.
Yeah.
Matriarchal societies in our history, it's interesting to study. There were no wars.
Yes.
It was only when patriarchal societies began to emerge, like we have today, that wars existed.
Aren't we looking at innate energy, though? We're looking at basically negative and positive charges here.
Well, that's one limited way of working at it. There could be 5.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm.
The law
agree.
of 5s with Anton Wilson, or there's options. Instead of binary, that's what you're talking about. Binary. We could have what I studied, which was nor-NAND logic, and or and not, which you call object-oriented, and where you have similar differences and different similarities, like John Bohm. And I can tell you that each system of metaphor, that's Gregory Bateson, by the way, that taught the concepts of what a metaphor is. And a good friend of mine once said, what is your metaphor? To serve your paradox. And how you go from one object to the next is quite arbitrary, like going from a wheel to lug nuts, and a tire, and an inner tube. You're chunking down or chunking up in systems. How you choose to break those down is quite arbitrary. So, of course, I have 2 ox in my meadow. I have my pair of ox in my meadow. That's what my meadow is for, to serve my 2 ox, my pair of ox.
Yes. Yes. well,
Now you're getting the distinction of language, ambiguity, and what a real metaphor is about. Making a leap, one thing to another, and how they're connected, how they are not connected. That's why I was really used. I started my military career working for NASA when I was 15 years old. Old man DuPont came to my high school and recruited me to do Fortran, Ingal, Cobol with a bunch of black women at NASA. And that's where I started. And then when I came out of Pullman, Washington State, he brought me back to the East Coast, where I started at Delaware, Princeton, MIT, and then taught at Harvard. And I know, I don't know.
Yes. Rick, I have kind of a left turn here. So all this brings to mind the idea of optic crystals, like perfect ones that are used military grade or above, like the Siberian blue and the ones that are being used in clockworks, etc. But I'm looking at advanced machinery and advanced tech. Can you give some insight into that?
Would you like me to go with that? I had top secret clearances back in the 70s, and I had 4 volts. That means I was above top secret. They didn't call it that back then. It was called top secret, which was an orange and yellow badge, as opposed to secret, which was yellow, and confidential was green. And I had 4 dots on my badge, which means I managed vaults, which you would call above top secret. Vault permits means I ran the vault. I could walk into that vault without a need to know. I could read anything I chose to read in that vault. And I ran 4 different vaults. I did not work in alien studies back then. They had me mostly doing paranormal studies. Nobody else could do that. Mm-hmm. And I back then it was the space race, and we were really actually more worried about what the Russians were doing than what the aliens might be doing. You know,
that's why I specifically brought up the Siberian blue quartz that was developed in Siberia in a village they created to look like a village, where they were using it in a private military stuff in satellites.
Well, we have Groom Lake, we have Area 54, Area 51. We have these secret hangar places where we have artifacts. I did a couple of artifact studies in Chicago. I was at the University of Chicago. Their vaults are in the basement. I used to call it Chicago. But I had this artifact. Nobody, even with my level of top secret and so on, they never gave me full disclosure. Didn't work like that. I don't know where the artifact came from. The scuttlebutt was it came from Florida, but you know, I had no confirmation on that.
What was it?
I had an object that was about as big as a TV or something, and I fired a 50 caliber cannon at it and went down with an electron microscope to look for lattice damage. And what happened is the bullet, when it hit the ordnance, it just decimated the product into aluminum foil. It just crumpled down into nothing. And then it was started to flow back. It had memory of what its original shape was. It was electrophoretic, electrophoresis. And I watched it do that. And we have something in technology now that will approximately do that. It's called Fullerenes. I have a whole chapter on Fullerenes in my book. But that was back in 1974. And we didn't have, we didn't even have graphene oxide back then. We didn't have fullerenes, which are much, much smaller monolayers of carbon. It turns out fullerenes, when you take carbon and you bond it to itself, has a 1.4 nanometer spacing, just enough to put a single molecule of water inside it. And chapter 6, I think, on fullerenes, and I'm not sure which chapter, I think it's chapter 6, it talks about building 7, where they deployed a new weapon using a neutron fullerene fusion bomb, where instead of putting structured water, which is H3O2 inside, they put deuterium. And just that difference, water, is enough to cause building 7 to fall down on itself and slag. There's only one thing in the world that will cause a concrete and steel to slag, and that's plasma. And that's what I did for my undergraduate thesis. I built the first plasma jet. And so I've got a lot of different things that I've done over the years to get to a place where I now realize we've been here before.
Yes. Chapter 6 is Fullerene water that you're referring to, just so people know moving forward.
One of the projects I did for Dr. Carl Schleicher, he was the model we used for the Smoking Man when I did the first 8 episodes of X-Files for Fox. I did the workup and the first 8 episodes, and then I refused to move to Hollywood, so they brought Carter in and only used me as an advisor up in BC on set. I remember that the idea of, I went to Tibet and I spoke to several Tibetan lamas, and they brought out, I filmed it, they brought out 17, it had to be 17, of these long horns that they blow, it has a very deep, that they use in communication.
Yes. Yeah.
One canyon to another, right? And when they put 17 of them in a specific geometric alignment, it so compressed the air that large objects started to float, and you could push them with a single finger. Oh, wow. Now, we do not have that kind of technology in our current workplace today, and yet we have evidence of something like that existing in previous epochs. And what is an epoch? Yes. Fire in this epoch, the so-called tapesia of electronic fire with electricity and electromagnetic waves, and the whole thing smacks of man being in a petri dish and being terraformed. Mm-hmm. And as a metaphor, it isn't that that's happening as much as that's what I can conceptualize. Like, where did rhesus negative come from? Where did the GMO in man come from? A single moment, and almost 53% of our population now is non-human.
Yes.
And there's something else. Where did it come from? I don't know. It came from the spike protein. What is the spike protein? Well, the spike protein is that creepy chemistry that does not appear in nature. Where did it come from? That surrounds and encompasses some of the different viruses that we've been enjoying recently, and is what actually causes the GMO, not the COVID virus. What happens is, instead of allowing your immune system to take care of the virus, and most people can't because they're not healthy.
Right.
Well, then that's what's going on there. What's happening is that they become a carrier.
Yes.
Which means that the one form of human at some point is not going to be able to interface with the other.
That's what is looking very apparent to me, even at this early stage.
Yeah. What's that mean? Well, I have always been. This is why all of our saints in history have stressed the importance of meditation, training the mind, because man has a responsibility. The thoughts he chooses to entertain. If I can comprehend or envision this, it's not only true, it's even worse. Mm. And if that's true, where do we go with this? Well, that's the purpose of meditation. And like I said, all forms lead to Rome. But you need a reference point, North Star, know what direction you're going. And everybody's different, and everybody's way of drawing a magic circle around themselves is different. You can start with somebody's recommendation of the way they do it, like Dion Fortune or May.
Yeah.
And then you evolve. And that's where learning becomes study, where you integrate it and it's no longer mine, it becomes yours. That's what my book is about.
I want to expand on this with what you present in chapter 3. So the energy which patterns randomness seems appropriate right now.
Oh, the Omega principle. You know how long ago I wrote that? Did you notice the copyright? I wrote that way back. The thought that occurs, that's the Masonic secret, by the way.
Yes.
The thought that occurs at the moment of orgasm.
Yes.
Climax. Mm-hmm. Happens. That's their secret. Why? It is emotions that punctuate psyche into matter. And if you can't just do it with one single thought, like my ESP book said, you repeat that thought over and over again until it manifests. Because it will.
Oh, yes, it certainly will for people that don't understand this. So we come back to Psyche again, and I asked a specific question earlier, and I know in your book you talk about Psyche into matter, but I'm trying to get the connection here from you between water and matter.
Water is an unusual, it is the first molecule, not hydrogen bonding to itself, H2. Water, helium, others, it's the first molecule that has a dipole moment. And because of that dipole moment, that's a dimensional gate. Mm. And, H2O or H3O2 or H2O2 or deuterium. Tritium is lesser known. Did you know that almost half the ocean between Australia and Antarctica is mostly deuterium? That's where they mine it.
That's very intriguing. Stable. Yeah, that's very intriguing.
Yeah, but tritium is as an isotope. So then you have clustered water. That would be H709 with a free radical ion. That'd be called Willard water or Rife, others that have made the discovery that you go by a waterfall and somehow you feel healthier you are. Mm-hmm. Why? Because of that free radical ion, H709, and a free radical ion that floats. And it's that ion that activates oxygen, and oxygen, of course, turns on adenosine triphosphate, ATP. That's where cold fusion occurs in the body. Mm-hmm. Now, you want to get younger? What age do you be? Because the way the body tells you, when you have goosebumps, you're generating stem cells.
Oh, there's a nugget right there. That's incredible.
just that's how the body notifies consciousness, wakey, wakey, that you're generating stem cells. The chill that goes up and down your spine, that's dimethyltryptamine. That is those are little cilia out of the central nervous system that has a light beam going up and down the spine. And that light beam is in the visible light region, which means Robert O. Becker, a Nobel Prize winner, co-authored a paper with me on that, where you stimulate the pineal gland and you can turn the neural cavity on to generate true nerve tissue now rather than glial cell. And I proved that in Clinic 7 at the UW, and a paper that Robert O. Becker and I wrote. And that's how to regenerate nerve tissue. Ward Dean, Surgeon General from the Marine Corps, wrote a book called Biological Aging Mechanisms, Clinical Approach. And he did studies all over the world on different universities, how they measure aging. And the conclusion at the end of his book is that every single process that we define as aging is reversible. Mm. And most of that can be done like goosebumps by just using the mind's eye.
How does one trigger that? Because the goosebumps experience has a mystique to it, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, it takes practice. You know, you've been culturally and genetically been programmed not to be very aware of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. They've purposely dumbed you down. But you know you can get that chill going up and down your spine just with your mind's eye. You can do the same thing with goosebumps. Hoo-hoo. There it is. Just like that.
Oh, Rick, you're awesome.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
I'm just really very lucky with the kinds of people that I've had the good fortune of studying under and now leading me to this moment.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. You know, some religious-minded people might think, or spiritually-minded people might think this is a divine providence. What do you have to say about that?
There's something above us. We're just in the food chain.
Yeah.
And actually, on Earth, there are 4 mammals that are ahead of us, minimally. Now, how about that elephant? That elephant
I love the elephant.
Well, yeah, but there's this one elephant in Cambodia that was able to paint itself, you know, using its trunk and different colored, going down onto a color board, and painted itself and depicted an awareness of self beyond that of you or me.
I recall this.
And so how's that work? And, it's all around us.
Well, can we pivot over to cephalopods when we're talking about this level?
You see, it's not humbling. It's Bob Dylan. Everybody's got to serve somebody. That's the way I choose to look at it, that way, kind of. I don't really know where this is all going to go. It is an adventure. I am lucky because I personally feel I have lived more than 3 lifetimes. Look at all the different books I've written to date, and I have a whole bunch more in front of me. I'm 77. I have patrons coming out of the woodworks wanting these books in print before I turn into worm food. But who knows? Maybe I'll find my TARDIS and go back to the future.
Well, and you keep stimulating the chills so that you can stimulate that regeneration of your stem cells.
Yeah. Yeah, that means you have control of your biology.
Yes.
And you can reverse processes.
Is there a wormhole of consciousness into riding outside of the wave of time, of the illusion of Maya, of the Maya of time?
Yeah, I don't know how to respond to that. Time is a duration of consciousness, and we each of us experience it differently at different stages of our growth, like a child over an adult. Right now, things seem to be speeding up, and time is, slipping behind me. I prefer the Chambers Brothers myself. Time has come today.
Yes.
THYME. Time has come today.
Yes.
Time.
Rick, I wanted to look at cephalopods with you. So we've been talking about other vertebrates with higher consciousness. What are your thoughts on cephalopods in general? Octopus, octopi, etc.
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking again. You're talking about the 8 heads of Hydra? What?
Well, that's certainly tied into the symbolic factor here, but I'm looking at the idea of the intelligence in which they possess and the abilities within the intelligence that they express.
Well, like I tried to imply earlier, in awareness has many, many faces. I'm just one of many different kinds of awareness. My girlfriend, Julie, is an empath. One that I would have in earlier years wanted to study because she can touch your body and know where your pain is and why.
Yes.
I've never seen anything like it as an empath. Now, there's lots of people that have these different kinds of qualities. Actually, we all have all of them, and we have been culturally and genetically been programmed to disregard them. Like working with instinct. When you come from a level of instinct, that's ESP. That's what ESP is, it's instinct. And when you come from that place, you do not, by definition, make mistakes in the physical world.
Yes.
Now, that's why you want to be intuitive. You want to listen. The first thought, it's always like this too. The first thought that you have on something is almost always the most correct one.
I agree, and I agree through experiential, an experiential background in that. See, okay, so this is all begging this idea of, and if you could pull up to this, the idea of genes and recessive genes, and how does something express so magically in one person in a bloodline and then skip a few generations and come out later?
Well, I don't know. I'm Nelson line out of England. My great-grandfather was Rudolf Steiner's lodge master. That's the little eye in the triangle that I wear. That was my great-grandfather. He was Rudolf Steiner's lodge master in Zurich. That lodge uses me now to mentor for Waldorf. And I had a 12-year-old doing his doctorate at Cornell at one point, and what would I mentor someone like that? He ended up writing a comic book for Feral Press.
I love Feral Press.
Dark Press. Part of Feral Press.
Yeah, they're great.
Out of Portland. And I can tell you that awareness has many different faces. And that IQ test, like Minnesota Multiphasic, MMPI, CPI, those things, what they're measuring is survival coefficient, adaptability.
Yes.
They're not measuring intelligence, actually. I know the difference between the two. I'm not very intelligent. I'm intuitive. I'm a little brat kid. I throw tantrums. But it's a way of being and relationship to self and knowing who you are. I, at any given moment, have always known how I feel about something. That feeling, like the moment, can change very quickly. But I know how I feel. I can go right in and I know how I feel about something. And it can change within a minute, even. But that's what the purpose of meditation, going inward and turning off the white noise and listening to yourself. They call that Simran and Bhajan in the system. I was initiated by a man named Sharan Singh. I'm a satsangi. My meditation starts at the third eye. He's out of Bias, India. He does a thing called Sant Mat, SANTMAT, which means Path of the Masters. He's the grandson, or what? He's dead now. He was the grandson of Kirpal Singh, not Kirpal Singh, going way back, never mind. But Paul Twitchell, others have, with their Ekankar, talk about it. Basically, what you do is Simran and then Bhajan. Simran is you say a bunch of God names over and over again, and then weary the mind, cause it to defocus. Once you've gotten to that one place, then you stop and you listen. And what happens is, in the right ear, this is out of the Upanishads, it's called the voice of the silence, the lost chord, what Terence McKenna called zero-point energy. You hear a sound. And what that does is, if you listen to it, you leave your body. You go home for a brief moment. It's not astral projection, it's soul travel. And I go to a place that I would call Psyche. It's geometry, and has more content and peacefulness there than anything I could possibly find here. And then I come back to my body and kind of battle the world. I try to do that as much as about 10% of my life. Right? Practice training my mind. I've been doing that now since 1977, and that's what has led me this place I am now in my realization of net or no.
What is the difference between soul traveling and astral projection?
Astral projection, there's a silver cord or a thread that connects you to your astral body. And it is a form of extrasensory perception where you take your consciousness to the source of the information as an astral body, and then it comes back into your physical body. Soul travel is quite different. This is where I go to the multiverse, and what I'm going to try to write a field equation on this next year with these two Russians.
This is, okay, so for me, this is very significant because I'm constantly trying to, dream work has been one of my lifelong things.
When you're astral projecting, try to look at your hands. Find a grounding or North Star.
Yes. Well, what I'm saying here is that my experiences, and I think sometimes language can be a problem. Every time I'm out, there's no silver cord. And so and everyone's insisting that there's a silver cord, and I'm insisting that there's not.
You might be soul traveling. Have you read anything by Sharon Singh?
No, I have not. So I would appreciate.
Sharon, Charan, Singh, Singh. He wrote a book called Die to Live. Parts out of this movement. They're all good. This is the one I chose. They all work. He might have some words for you that I'm inequipped to offer.
Well, one of the things you just gave me was the difference between soul travel and astral projection, which is major.
Well, that's where you have the sound current involved.
Yes. Yeah.
That's okay. And if you start hearing, my sound, especially when I start to really, is almost like Old Lang Syne. I can hear it.
Yes.
It's not, and I can change it. I can actually, with my mind's eye, make it sound like I want to. But it always, when I'm not focused on that part of it, I'm just listening to it. That's where the action happens. It's not the sound itself, and it's not listening. It's when you're not focusing on trying to make it something.
Yes, I completely 100% am tuned into this right now because that's my experience as well. And you're giving me answers no one else has. One of the things, too, I want to tie this into what is this experience that gets loosely called tinnitus or tinnitus, that is a white noise and there's frequency. Tinnitus
is always there. Who knows? It also might be termites, in the house. And there's a lot of different things that cause noise. and you confuse one with another because you can't articulate it. It's in octaves above your ability to hear, but there are other parts of your body that act as resonances, like your temporal lobes with synthetic telepathy in the 0.3 to 3 gigahertz. Each of our organs is a bandwidth sensitive. And so who knows where the sound as a sound might be originating. And remember, there is synesthesia where you may be cross-modal in your translation.
That is very interesting. Can you elaborate on the termite thing?
Synesthesia, I have a whole chapter on in that in my book. It is where a child, or me, when I did 20 years working as a volunteer at the Brit, and I especially enjoyed jazz. And a lot of people would come up to me and say, why are they doing that? I don't understand their music. And I would say, oh, well, they're not doing music right now. They're practicing. Because
yes.
I could say
yes.
the seventh and why they did it, for discord or for something else. And often, like in more complex music, jazz, they'll do unusual experiments. All right, we have a new conductor at the Brit in Jacksonville, probably 5 years now. He put the orchestra, that's a 240-piece band, first violin is 27 years, and he put them on the rim of Crater Lake and then brought in American Indian chanting. And that...
Oh, my God.
Music. Yeah, you have no idea how that played. And the Brit is absolutely worth a visit sometime. If you ever get to Southern Oregon during the summer months, the Brit is an incredible, open in the redwoods music, all forms.
Amazing. So
yeah, from Brenda Carlisle right on down, you know.
Oh, I love Brenda.
Yeah.
I want to, come back to me with this idea on the resonance or the frequency that things like termites make. Well,
they make a noise that being high frequency, usually in the 18,000 cycle bandwidth or even 24,000 cycle. I mean, they're up above audio, and yet there'll be an octave that it'll be a hissing noise or something similar, like machinery or something like that. It's how you experience it. It doesn't mean it's real, but my girlfriend has better hearing than I do. I have a heredity in my genetics that at some point I'll need a hearing aid. I'm an old man going toothless and hairless, but just kidding. She cut my ponytail of 47 years off.
Oh, my God. Wow.
Kind of scary.
I want to dive back into frequencies again, and the frequencies that are possibly natural frequencies and then the weaponization of frequencies that are partly driving the world around us.
When I had my single tour at Groom Lake, I could not understand how this woman, it was feminine, could be talking to me. It was inside my head. And that led me to work with Alan Frey at Willow Grove in creating synthetic telepathy, which is a microwave band in the 0.3 to 3 gigahertz. What it does is it causes the temporal lobes to heat up, and then they begin to ring, and you can heterodyne audio on that and hear it inside your head without going through the audio process. That is not what she did. What she did, I have no idea. That's the closest I could get from that experience with her. That's the weaponization where everything like water, you've got structured water, which is the finest antioxidant there is for radiation, in Fullerenes, or deuterium, in which case you have the building at Building 7 at 9/11. And just using water. Both sides of everything have a plus and minus. Does that mean it's good and bad? No. That is the limitation of man's ability to conceptualize the one edge to the other, and why everything is in cavitation processes. Two brains, two suns, black hole, white hole, the other side, etc. Everything that we experience is cavitation. And so we have absolutes. But again, that's the limitation of man's ability to conceptualize. War and Peace.
When one is submerged in water, the idea of frequency in water and how it can act as a portal, am I in the right direction with that?
That is what a dipole moment does, where you have a dipole, now you have levorotary and para and ortho water. See, you have two sides of it again. That's what a dipole does. That's a cavitation concept again. Mark Leclerc is doing incredible work in that area right now. I can show you that cold fusion, in my book I show you cold fusion processes in the wave, leading edge of a wave in the ocean. That is where cold fusion occurs in nature, is in the movement of a wave. And that's the math that brought old man DuPont to my high school when I was 15, was that I wrote a new meson field theory before I built my linear accelerator. I did some work with a Japanese guy named Yukawa, who got a Nobel Prize on the meson, which is, and that was the muon. At that time, the muon was considered a meson. Today, the muon is considered an elementary particle. It will change even more, because I later demonstrated how a muon creates a tachyon factory, which was later then used on the Mariner 4 to measure the water on Mars, index of refraction. And what you do is you beam a bunch of muons down at Mars, and an index of refraction, which back then was called Cherenkov radiation, is now called Bremsstrahlung, or index of refraction. It's where I was creating particles going faster than the speed of light. Did that when I was 16.
So I want to tie that into the mind hardware, and you have that in Appendix A in your new book.
Oh, yeah. What is Appendix A again? Remind me.
Non-local mind hardware.
Yeah, there's hardware out there now that you can actually integrate into your own studies. I was originally, Nick Begich wrote the foreword to this book and patroned this book. You know who Nick is, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Nick did the foreword in all three of these books and patroned this one. Nick wanted to bring me back into writing, and what we were going to do when he brought me up to Chickalun was to co-author a book called The Brain Spa. But that's a long time ago, and when we started to write that, Nick was not technically capable of going to that level yet, and so what we ended up doing was writing power tools, which he wrote the foreword to, like he did the ESP. And this non-local mind is now the culmination of this series toward the evolution of man and consciousness in man. Consciousness is a dream state. Mm-hmm. It's not real.
Yes, thank you for that.
And once you understand that, then these tools are to enhance that dream state and moving to other dream states which have more content to reality, like lucid dreaming.
Yes.
And these are tools in a toolbox, like a Ford hammer is to knock a dent out in an automobile.
So with this in mind, non-local mind hardware, and you brought this up earlier, and I wanted to make sure we were kind of wrapping with this idea, death and what happens in the process therein and shortly after, and what that is.
Yeah, well, in my universe, I almost see death as waking up.
Yes, and mine as well.
Well, it's arbitrary, and you choose that because it opens those doors over these doors that are closed. And my parents were atheists. They thought that death was the end of life, which it is. It is. But if life is a dream state, then death could be waking up. And if death is waking up, that means you then possibly have choice. And you will find that also described in my book about near-death experiences. I got to spend a couple of weeks in the jungles with Ibn Alexander and talked with him about his near-death experiences. I studied with Kubler-Ross, and there is some indication to indicate that death is where you go back home, like I did with my meditation.
Yes.
So that's why my teacher wrote the book Die to Live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was Sharon Singh.
Sharon Singh, yes.
Yeah.
But there's other writers that I think are in that field that are also exceptional. Sharon Singh is, I understand the new master that took over Sant Mat is Gurinder Singh. And my understanding, I haven't met him, but my understanding is that he's even more aware than my teacher was. When my teacher chose me for initiation, he was Prime Minister of India, and he chose me, and when he looked me in the eye, he said to me, at the moment of my death, that he personally would be there to take me across the abyss.
Oh, wow.
And of course, I was into Sharon as the boatman, so, nobody's ever offered me a hallucination that took me even further.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, it's a metaphor.
Yeah, of course it is, but it's incredible. It doesn't take that away from it. What's the difference between soul travel and death from your vantage?
Well, I'm not dead.
Well, you and I just agreed that death is an awakening, basically, within the dream.
Type of awakening, yeah. Partial glimpse, like when you have to go up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom.
Yes.
And you go in and you're kind of stumbling, notice things in the dark, but you stumble over other things and then immediately go back to sleep.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy, actually. Everyone can relate to that.
I don't know quite how else to put it. It's we are asleep, and we can change this reality with our own thoughts, just like that.
Well, you talk about that in the book with Imagination Becomes Real, the child's mind.
Yeah. That's why I would say that our children are got to be our most important natural resource. Because
look what's happening to them with this new race, with this whole vaccine.
Isn't that terrible? There's going to be a whole generation of kids that are Gen X's. The Gen X's today, and the way they drive and the way they think reality is owed to them, I mean, it's scary.
Yeah.
And I don't have an answer for any of that.
Yeah.
I'm I know that my book will offer some direction to some of them. How many? I have no idea.
Did you ever imagine that the collective dreaming would come to this point where we are? Kumbaya.
I have no idea what's going on now or why, because it isn't anything I would have wanted to see happen.
Same here. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying, but there's all this whole...
That's why I feel it was something unnatural.
Yes.
From outside, like we're in a Petri dish.
Yes, that's where that's what seems logical to me, and where I keep finding myself logically going, rather than the democratic nature of dreaming reality. There's something extra going on.
And I love my country, and I'm embarrassed for my government.
Oh, me too. I don't even call it mine anymore. The agency there is in...
Well, you're up in Portland?
I'm not in Portland, but I'm in the Gorge.
Okay, so black matter's up there. You know what really matters? Living color.
I agree.
Isaac Bonwitz, he was a friend of mine when he was editor of Gnostica News. He wrote a book called Real Magic and later formed the Druid Society out of New York. And he had a chapter in his book on real magic, unlike Radin, which was stated black magic, white magic, and living color.
Yes.
Black and white is Christian.
Yes.
And witchcraft, because I started my journey as Coven Camelot, Star of the North, with Karl Wachowski and Llewellyn, and then went into OTO. I got so high in OTO that Phyllis Seckler, Mildred Burlingame, and Helen Parsons Smith offered me the Caliphate, and I turned it down. And what they did is they then gave it to Breeze, who moved it, Grand Lodge, from New York at that time. 1 year before 9/11, he moved it to Berlin. Wir wollen Deutsch bleiben. We all speak German here. But I can tell you that I did not want to run an order that was populated by a bunch of kids trying to rationalize their use of drugs.
Thank you.
All the states of consciousness are sacred.
Yes.
Timothy Leary, even in his book, The Varieties of Psychedelic Experience, based on the Bordeaux Thadal, stated that the Buddhists have 4 reasons for getting high, and only one of them was for recreation and escape. Something else. I remember when Tana Wilson and I went and did a writ of habeas corpus at Vacaville, and they had to release him because he wasn't there. That was illegal. Tana was Robert Anton Wilson's daughter, and they released him, and when Tim got out of prison, what I met was not the same person I studied with earlier. Oh. They had done something terrible to him. They courted him.
Yes, of course. It's interesting that it was palpable, though, that you could register that.
Well, it just wasn't the same person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I'm doing now is I have a friend, John Golden. He lives here up in Selma. He wrote a book called Once Upon a Time at San Quentin. And he is a second-generation high tower guard. And they fired him illegally because he took pictures and made a picture book out of Once Upon a Time at San Quentin. And I've got some people in England now looking at that to make a major movie out of it. I write screenplays. That's one of the things I like to do. And so I'm helping him write his own screenplay. His book will have pictures to depict the concept of one page would be the voice of the code of silence. Another would be, the different things that come out of a prison to be distinguished from a penitentiary, which the Quaker evolved. And it's interesting because he has a couple of good friends that were killed in prison as guards because of rioting and so on at San Quentin.
That is also intriguing, and I know you're excited to get to your girlfriend. I didn't mean to be boring, but I haven't seen my girlfriend. I know she's your love. I want to. The book is The Non.Local Mind in a Holographic Universe, and I wanted to compliment you on the cover art as well. I really like the art on this.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah,
that was done by Helen Downs, my social media out of Brisbane. But I did everything. I did everything else, including the artwork inside the book, the layout, paste up, all of it. My girlfriend did proofing, and she has a couple of masters. She was a school teacher, elementary school teacher, and then principal. I think that's why they had her be a handler. From a rat kid I am. I don't know. It's kind of cool.
The book is The Non.Local Mind in a Holographic Universe from Dr. Richard Allen Miller. How may people find you and your stuff in the world, Rick?
My website is its only source now at richardalanmiller.com. alanmiller.com, ALN. But I am seeking a literary agent, and I've got a shopping list of other things I need. I need somebody to manage my website. I can do it all, but I can't do everything.
Right, time, the illusion of.
I'm writing,
Right.
But I need somebody to put it up on the website, and it's at Squarespace. I hate Squarespace. I would rather be back at Bluehost, but using WordPress. I know how to do it all. It's just I can't do everything. And so I have legal, I have some other good parts of my team, but I have a big shopping list of other things. If people are interested in working with me, at this juncture, I have no money, but I certainly have a lot of books with a lot of potential to them. And so
yes.
Someone want to help me on that? I'm seeking volunteers and or individuals that we can have mutual access,
yes.
That kind of thing.
Well, that's a marvelous opportunity for someone who can get close and understand this at a different level.
I don't need website design now. Much as what I need is an IT person that can go in and handle trolls and other,
Well, all right. I want to thank you again, Rick. It's always a pleasure, and you're always welcome here in the Cosmic Salon. And I hope to catch up with you later down the road. Until then.
Got more books coming out. I got another one out November 10th. That'll be the Diamond Body.
Okay. Then we're going to make a date for that. I want to definitely, the Diamond Body.
I have an ebook I'm going to throw together real quick called Absence, How to Do Absence with Ears Optional. I used to do, Michael Moore sponsored me a few years back to do a bunch of workshops in Chattanooga, wanting to make them more sovereign. And at the end of the day, Chattanooga now does 20% of the food consumed in that city is grown locally right there because of my workshops. And as a result, what I did was always back then, I used to do an absence ritual after I did a workshop.
Yes.
And that's the only reason Michael put that workshop set together, is he wanted to do the absence ritual. I got a picture of him falling out of a chair with his glass spilling on the floor laughing.
That's an incredible feat in...
Yeah, it'll be a picture book on how to use absence. The absence and the green fairy, the way you do that, by the way, is the diversity of temperature between when you drop the sugar cube, drips in as flaming into the liquid, and then you immediately luge it with ice water. And the difference between the temperature is how much of that green fairy is created. That's where that happens.
Oh, that's good to know.
Maybe.
That is good to know. Yeah, really, beware the green fairy. All right, Rick Miller, I can't wait to talk to you again. Have a wonderful time in reunion with your love, and until later.
Nice talking with you. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Bye-bye.